Well, you think I was Harry Warden or something? Hey, Michael, check this out.
Welcome to Deconstructing, where I take apart an iconic horror movie to find out what makes it tick. If you're wondering why I picked a remake of a slasher classic instead of the original, well, we've got an entire episode of Real Slashers dedicated to that one this month, and it's live now, so be sure to check it out. Anyhow, I think this amped up remake doesn't get the love it deserves. After all, it's got this guy. And it's also one of the more successful entries in the mid-2000s 3D boom, back before the digital post-conversion process was a thing and every studio blockbuster automatically featured a 3D version. Not since Friday the 13th Part 3 has a slasher flick thrown so much at your face. Also, to deconstruct this version means a trip back to its roots, which means we'll still be giving the 1981 classic its due. With that said, I'll be taking my usual three-pronged strategy, beginning with Origin, where I'll trace the ancestry of the movie back to the glory days of Canadian tax shelter horror, and forward through the release of the high-concept reboot in 2009. In Legacy, I'll jump ahead to pinpoint that film's crucial role in legitimizing 3D as a mainstream cinema format. And with Mystery, I'll dig into some more obscure facts and rumors about one of the most successful 3D horror films ever made. So sit back and at least pretend to put on your 3D glasses. Don't do that for real or you'll get a headache. And prepare to be bombarded with all the outrageously gory, politically incorrect mayhem that is My Bloody Valentine 3D. I want to thank you guys for watching Deconstructing and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. Not only does any true slasher fan have the original My Bloody Valentine in their collection, they also know something about the cinematic climate of the late 70s and early 80s, particularly when it comes to independent horror movies. More specifically, the slew of low-budget horror coming out of Canada during that period. Commonly known as the tax shelter horror boom, this avalanche of low-budget titles took advantage of a loophole in the Canadian tax code that allowed producers to benefit from government incentives. It was more or less free money for anyone who wanted to spend it on Canadian productions. The filmmakers had a limited time to use these credits before they expired, so these movies were often formulaic, quick and dirty projects, cranked out assembly line style to meet the demands of drive-ins and grindhouses throughout North America. One of the more enduring titles from this period was also one of the most controversial. 1981's My Bloody Valentine achieved some notoriety after being neutered by the MPAA, who made US distributor Paramount Pictures cut several minutes of gory footage to make an R rating. It also drew the fire of movie critics Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, who highlighted the film as part of a special episode condemning slasher movies for their misogyny.
My Bloody Valentine, our next film, is another mad slasher going after mostly women victims, this time in a coal mining town. I'm really getting sick of these pictures.
First of all, it's disgusting. Secondly, it's so appallingly lacking in imagination. You would think that they could at least come up with a new disgusting angle.
And while that may be true for some slashers, it isn't fair to slam the entire genre. In fact, critics' anti-slasher backlash in the wake of Friday the 13th may have made Paramount a little overcautious about the amount of violence depicted on screen. It's quaint looking back at those reactions now, especially in light of what the makers of My Bloody Valentine 3D were able to pull off under an R rating. While it didn't take in much at the box office, the original film's controversial reputation led to a revival in home video where it became one of the most popular slasher rentals. Still, Paramount sat on the deleted footage for decades, even claiming incorrectly that it was lost forever. But fans finally got to see a mostly restored cut after the rights were picked up by Lionsgate, and that's where the story of My Bloody Valentine 3D begins. The intention to make the new version employing the latest 3D technology was there from the beginning, and one exec at Lionsgate reached out to the original filmmakers. Based on the story by producer Stephen Miller and screenwriter John Baird, the new script was written by Todd Farmer and Zane Smith, who updated and expanded some of the original characters but kept the basic whodunit plot thread about a series of murders perpetrated by a man in a miner's outfit, who may or may not be Harry Warden, the sole survivor of a mine collapse who murdered his fellow workers. This time the action is relocated to the north of Pittsburgh because at the time Pennsylvania was offering its own tax incentives. So bye-bye Valentine Bluffs, hello Harmony. Like the original, the production was shot on location at an actual mine, although it's no longer in operation. location. It's currently a museum and a kind of training ground for apprentice miners. Where the original film had most of its graphic content removed, the remake goes for broke, filling the screen with over-the-top splatter and a surprising amount of full-frontal nudity for a mainstream release. Director and editor Patrick Lussier orchestrated every gory kill to maximize the new 3D technology that would soon become a standard feature in your local megaplex. 2 4K digital cameras worked in sync to simulate the three-dimensional effect, so pickaxes, fireballs, and body parts are flung into audiences' laps without mercy, resulting in some of the best 3D work moviegoers had ever seen. While the remake does offer horror fans reason to smile, like casting genre legend Tom Atkins in a now expanded role as retired Sheriff Burke, and Supernatural co-star Jensen Ackles as Tom Hannigan, named TJ in the '81 version. It's a pretty mean-spirited film compared to the original, basically serving as a vehicle to deliver maximum shock value. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course. This movie has one job and it does it very well. It even manages to subvert fan expectations by dropping a little homage to Fight Club. It's not as much of a surprise twist as that film's climax, but it does change up the recipe enough to keep things interesting.
This is the most horrific event this town has ever seen. Authorities are calling this the Valentine's Day Massacre.
Prepare to witness
What do you want?
the most frightening 3D motion picture event to tear through the screen.
Unlike the original, the 2009 version was a massive hit at the box office, grossing over $21 million in its opening weekend and going on to rake in over $100 million worldwide. It was also the first R-rated film to be projected in the Real D format, and it premiered on over 1,000 screens in the US alone, and that's not counting the theaters showing the 2D version. So it's kind of surprising that Lionsgate decided against a sequel, which screenwriter Todd Farmer had already mapped out. Rumor has it the sequel would not only bring back all the surviving characters, but the script included a completely different role for Tom Atkins, and the character of Harry Warden would still be alive, having escaped from the asylum for real this time. Not even Farmer knows for sure why the studio execs passed on it, but he's still holding out hope they'll change their minds someday. While there aren't as many fan theories or behind-the-scenes anecdotes for this film, there's still some pretty interesting factoids I found in my research. Here are a few of my favorites. When the film came out, there was some speculation that Farmer deliberately wrote the part of the truck driver for himself, so he could play opposite a butt-naked Betsy Rue. But as it turns out, doing the scene full frontal was the actress's idea. The character was originally supposed to cover herself with a bedsheet, but Rue thought the scene would be scarier if she were rendered completely vulnerable. YouTube doesn't want you to see any of that, by the way. In addition to his famous role in Supernatural, Jensen Ackles is also an accomplished director, and directed several episodes of that series. Patrick Lussier says Ackles helped direct some of his own scenes in the mine, particularly for camera setups where there was no room for the crew in the cramped underground tunnels. In fact, the Supernatural episode My Bloody Valentine is a tribute to his work on this film. Speaking of which, Ackles' TV co-star Jared Padalecki also had a role in the reboot of Friday the 13th, which hit theaters just 1 month after this one. While Todd Farmer did create some spectacular murder set pieces in the script, he admits that some of the most inventive and gruesome deaths were thought up by director Patrick Lussier. He won't say exactly which ones, but I'm sure if you can get a copy of the script, you can solve that particular mystery yourself. What are your thoughts on the updated My Bloody Valentine? How does it stack up against the original? If they do get around to making that sequel, what do you think will happen to the surviving characters? Hit the comments and let us know, and please offer some suggestions on what movie you'd like to see deconstructed in a future episode. In the meantime, don't lose heart.